At 32 years old, my name is Thea Brighton, and 7 days ago, at my older sibling's lavish $200,000 ceremony held on a $15 million property in Newport, Rhode Island, someone placed a gray credential in my hand bearing the words, "Restricted entry attendee." My mother, Constance, leaned close and murmured softly, "This indicates you won't be receiving dinner, Thea." 3 full years had passed while I accumulated $10,000 for that contribution. 36 months of foregoing holidays, preparing every meal at home, and continuing to wear identical professional attire until the fabric showed visible wear at the edges. My intention was presenting my sibling with the most substantial offering within my financial capacity. My hope was demonstrating my rightful position within this household. What I received instead was a laminated rectangle of material, declaring my unwelcome status at the celebration. Consequently, I approached the contribution display, located my sealed package, and spoke 5 specific words that drained all color from my mother's expression. Prior to revealing what transpired afterward, please take a brief pause to like and subscribe, though only if this narrative connects with you personally. Leave a comment sharing your current location and the local time. However, to comprehend my actions that day, I must transport you backwards 6 months preceding that ceremony. The Brighton household appears flawless when examined superficially. My father, Roland, concluded a 35-year career as a mechanical engineer with identical employment. My mother, Constance, performed bank teller responsibilities before determining that domestic management aligned better with her preferences, particularly after my sibling began accumulating academic distinctions. Then there exists Felicity, 3 years my senior, possessing a Harvard MBA, employed as an investment banker with a distinguished Manhattan firm, the offspring who transformed my parents' holiday correspondence into something worth distributing. Regarding myself, I maintain mid-level accounting responsibilities at a modest logistics enterprise in Brooklyn. My residence is a studio requiring $1,800 monthly, with the perspective of masonry construction. Community college preceded my transfer to a state institution because my parents claimed insufficient resources for financing 2 daughters through expensive educational programs. Remarkably, they discovered adequate funds for Felicity's initial payment on her Tribeca condominium 3 years subsequently. Throughout my upbringing, I discovered how to quantify affection through spatial measurements. Felicity's sleeping quarters measured twice my own dimensions. Her storage space featured integrated shelving. Mine contained a metal pole with 3 plastic supports from the discount retailer. Following her secondary school completion, my parents organized a celebration featuring professional food service and a performing disc jockey. When my graduation arrived, my mother stated, "We'll arrange something modest," then completely forgot. Yet the memory remaining most vivid involves the photograph positioned on our family room shelf. A household portrait from 2015. My parents and Felicity positioned before a holiday tree, appearing as though they'd achieved extraordinary fortune. My image is absent. My mother explained the frame possessed insufficient dimensions for accommodating 4 individuals, therefore they eliminated me through cropping. Years passed, convincing myself this carried no significance. My assessment proved incorrect. The initial instance when I genuinely comprehended my designated role within this household, I had reached 18 years. June 2009 marked my secondary school graduation date. 4 years of dedication toward that particular moment. Academic recognition every semester. Volunteer contributions at the community library. Employment at a frozen dessert establishment, enabling me to purchase my own formal dance attire. Valedictorian status eluded me, yet pride existed for my accomplishments. The ceremony commenced at 2 o'clock during the afternoon. My stage crossing occurred at 2:47. Handshake with the principal completed. Diploma received. Camera smiling occurred despite knowledge that no family member operated the equipment. My parents occupied a location 300 miles distant, accompanying Felicity on a campus examination at Columbia University. She maintained junior college status while contemplating graduate education. My mother's explanation, Felicity's future demands time-sensitive attention. Additional graduations will occur for you. None materialized. The solitary person present in that auditorium attending for me was Aunt Margot, my mother's younger sibling. She traveled 2 hours from her botanical business in Providence to occupy the third row and celebrate when my name received announcement. Subsequently, she transported me to dinner at a small Italian establishment and presented a card containing a $100 note inside. "Your mother executed identical behavior toward me previously," she mentioned quietly, sectioning her chicken parmesan. "When my engagement occurred, she remained excessively occupied assisting your grandmother with china cabinet reorganization to examine the ring." Words failed me. Aunt Margot extended her hand across the table, squeezing mine. "You're not missing anything, Thea. They simply haven't developed the ability to perceive you yet. However, 15 years have elapsed waiting for their perception, and my conclusion suggests they never will." 6 months preceding the ceremony, my phone vibrated with a message from our household group conversation, a conversation where my addition occurred, yet participation remained minimal. Felicity had attached an image of her left hand, a 3-carat cushion-cut diamond, reflecting brilliance against what appeared to be a rooftop dining establishment in Manhattan. The message stated, "Sebastian proposed. Ceremony arrangements begin immediately. Sebastian Ashford IV." My encounters with him numbered exactly 2. Once during a household dinner where his entire meal conversation focused on his golf performance statistics, and once during Felicity's birthday celebration, where acknowledgement of me never occurred. His household represented established wealth from Newport, Rhode Island. His father had concluded hedge fund management, and his mother maintained board positions with 3 separate charitable organizations. The category of individuals who utilized summer as an action word. My mother's response arrived within moments. "My precious child, this represents the most joyful day of my existence." My father transmitted a thumbs-up symbol. I typed and erased 3 separate messages before determining, "Congratulations, Felicity. Happiness fills me for you." Nobody responded. 2 weeks subsequently, the invitation arrived. Substantial cotton material, approximately 600 grams. The lettering received gold embossing with a customized monogram featuring intertwined F and S characters. A small insert communicated to guests that the ceremony would occupy the Ashford household property and that lodging at a proximate hotel had received reservation at a reduced rate of $450 nightly. I held that invitation within my hands and reached a determination. This occasion would demonstrate difference. I would present Felicity with the most substantial offering within my financial capacity. I would demonstrate to my parents that my value equaled my siblings. A savings account began the following day. I designated it Ceremony Fund. Unknown to me, my mother had alternative arrangements. Accumulating $10,000 required 3 years. That figure might not impress certain individuals, yet when your annual income reaches $52,000 before taxation and your residence is New York City, every dollar maintains importance. Lunch purchases ceased. Home coffee preparation replaced purchasing it. Not a single holiday occurred. Not even a weekend excursion to an economical destination. When my winter coat began deteriorating, I personally repaired the lining rather than purchasing a replacement. My intention was presenting my sibling with something meaningful, something demonstrating I wasn't the household disappointment they perceived me as. 3 weeks before the ceremony, I visited my bank and requested a cashier's check for $10,000. The teller, a young woman with compassionate eyes, inquired if I desired it in an envelope. I confirmed. Then I returned home to my tiny studio residence and composed a letter to my sibling. "Dear Felicity, congratulations on your ceremony. I recognize we haven't maintained closeness always, yet I hope this offering assists you and Sebastian in constructing a beautiful existence together. Wishing you complete happiness throughout the world. With affection, Thea." I positioned the check and the letter in the envelope, sealed it, and inscribed both our names on the exterior. Then I captured a photograph of everything, the envelope, the check, the letter, and preserved it to a folder on my phone. I don't understand why I performed that action. Perhaps some portion of me already anticipated what was approaching. That identical evening, my mother called. Her voice carried brightness and artificiality, the manner it always adopted when she desired something. "Thea, have you purchased your offering yet? I was considering you could transmit the money to me presently, and I'll merge it with our offering for the card." I paused. "I'd prefer presenting it myself, Mother, at the ceremony." Silence, Then acceptable, whatever you desire. She disconnected without farewell. The indications existed. I simply didn't wish to observe them. 2 months before the ceremony, Felicity hosted her bridal gathering at the plaza. Invitation to assist with planning never arrived. That privilege went to her 4 closest companions from business school and 2 cousins from my mother's side. Cousins I'd encountered perhaps 3 occasions throughout my entire existence. Cousins whose households possessed wealth. I received seating at a corner table with unfamiliar people. Companions of companions. The category of guests receiving invitations because the space requires appearing full. During the champagne acknowledgement, my mother stood and discussed Felicity's accomplishments. Harvard, her career, her exceptional future husband. She spoke for 7 minutes. My mention never occurred, not even gratitude to Thea for attendance. Yet the moment I'll never forget transpired in the bathroom. I'd stepped away to adjust my makeup. I'd been crying slightly. Not that anyone noticed when I heard voices from one of the compartments. My mother and my Aunt Harriet whispering, "Thank heavens you didn't make her a bridesmaid." Aunt Harriet stated, "Can you imagine? The Ashfords would have inquired about her employment. And then what?" My mother laughed. It was a light, airy sound. "I understand." Felicity comprehended immediately. Sebastian's mother is exceptionally particular regarding appearances. We cannot have anything distracting. I stood frozen before the mirror. My reflection stared back. Mascara smudged beneath one eye. Distracting. That's what I represented to them. Not a sibling, not an offspring. A distraction potentially ruining their opportunity to ascend into the Ashford household's world. I should have departed right then. Yet I didn't. I convinced myself improvement would occur. I convinced myself the ceremony day would demonstrate difference. 1 week before the ceremony, I received an electronic message from the ceremony planner. The subject line stated, "Rehearsal dinner guest list final." I scrolled through the 40 names on the list. Felicity's bridesmaids, Sebastian's groomsmen, both parental sets, aunts, uncles, cousins from the Ashford side, even a few of Felicity's college companions who'd flown in early. My name was absent. I read the list 3 times, convinced I'd missed it. Then I called my mother. "Mother, I didn't receive an invitation to the rehearsal dinner." "Oh," she paused. "Thea, the rehearsal dinner is exclusively for the ceremony party and immediate household. Sebastian's parents maintain very strict regulations about the numbers." I felt something cold establish itself in my chest. I'm not immediate household. You understand what I mean. It's not personal. The Ashfords are hosting and they have numerous important individuals to accommodate. There's simply no space. I pulled up the electronic message again, scanned the names. Felicity's companion Jessica appears on the list. She's not household. She's a bridesmaid. Thea, don't make this difficult. I wanted to scream. I wanted to inquire why Jessica, a woman Felicity had known for 4 years, was more important than the sibling she'd grown up with. Yet I knew it wouldn't matter. My mother had made her choice a long time ago. "Acceptable," I said quietly. "I understand." "Good. We'll see you at the ceremony." She disconnected. I sat in my residence for a long time after that, staring at the envelope on my kitchen table. $10,000, 3 years of sacrifice, and I wasn't even invited to the dinner the night before. Yet I still believed the ceremony day would be different. I still believed that when they saw what I'd done for Felicity, they'd finally see me. I was so naive. 3 days before the ceremony, Aunt Margot called me. I could hear scissors snipping in the background. She was probably arranging botanical displays at her business, the way she always did when she needed to think. "Thea, honey, I heard about the rehearsal dinner." I sighed. "It's acceptable, Aunt Margot. It's just logistics." "It's not logistics." Her voice was sharper than usual. "It's your mother being your mother. And I need to ask you something important. Do you genuinely want to attend this ceremony?" The question caught me off guard. "Naturally I do. Felicity's my sibling. Felicity is your sibling," Aunt Margot agreed. "Yet that doesn't mean she acts like one. And Constance." She stopped herself. "Your mother and I grew up in the identical residence, Thea. I know exactly what she's capable of. What do you mean? Aunt Margot was quiet for a moment. Then, at your mother's ceremony, I received seating at the final table next to the catering station. She introduced me to your father's household as my sibling, the one who arranges botanical displays. Not by name, not as household, just the one who arranges botanical displays. I didn't know what to say. Your mother doesn't hate you, Thea. She just doesn't perceive you as useful to her arrangements. And right now, her arrangement is to impress the Ashford household. You don't fit that picture. So, what should I do? That's not for me to determine. I heard her set down the scissors. Yet I want you to know something. I'll be at that ceremony, and if anything transpires, anything at all, you won't be alone. I felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you, Aunt Margot. Household isn't about blood, sweetheart. It's about who shows up. Remember that. I didn't know how much I'd need those words. 3 days subsequently, the night before the ceremony, my phone rang at 11:47. It was Harper Chen. We'd been closest companions since college, and by some strange coincidence, her event planning enterprise had been hired to coordinate Felicity's ceremony. She tried to stay professional about it, keeping our companionship separate from her work. Yet that night, her voice was shaking. Thea, I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay calm. I sat up in bed. What is it? I was reviewing the seating chart tonight. Final check before tomorrow. She paused. Your name was on table 3 2 weeks ago. Household of the bride. Yet when I looked today, it's been crossed out with a pen and there's a note next to it. My heart started pounding. What does the note say? It says, guest will receive restricted access credential. No meal. I couldn't breathe. Who wrote it? I don't know for sure, yet I recognize the handwriting. Thea. Harper's voice dropped. It looks like your mother's. The room started spinning. No meal, restricted access. They weren't just excluding me from the rehearsal dinner. They were excluding me from the entire celebration. Harper, are you certain? I took a photograph of the note. I'm transmitting it to you now. My phone buzzed. I opened the image and stared at the familiar handwriting, the identical neat cursive that had signed my birthday cards for 32 years. Guest will receive restricted access credential. No meal. My mother hadn't just forgotten about me. She'd planned this deliberately, methodically. She desired my money, yet not my presence. I didn't sleep that night, yet by morning I knew exactly what I was going to do. I woke up on the morning of June 14th, with a strange sense of clarity. The panic from the night before had burned itself out. In its place was something colder, harder, not anger exactly, more like certainty. I stood before my closet, the identical tiny closet I'd had for 4 years, and chose my outfit carefully. A navy blue dress I'd bought on sale 2 years ago. Simple, elegant, not attention-seeking. The category of dress you wear when you desire to look respectable, yet not memorable. I did my own makeup. Neutral tones. A light application of mascara. Nothing that would run if I cried. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and gathered my evidence. The screenshot of my mother's message asking me to transmit the money early. The photograph of the seating chart note Harper had transmitted. The picture of my envelope with the cashier's check inside. And Harper's contact information in case anyone tried to call me a liar. I positioned my phone in my clutch alongside the envelope. Then I called Aunt Margot. I'm still attending, I told her. I figured you would. Are you acceptable? I don't know. Yet I need to observe this through. I need to watch them do it to my face. Aunt Margot was quiet for a moment. I'll be there, Thea. I'll stay close to the contribution display. If you need me, just look in that direction. Thank you. And Thea, whatever you determine to do, I'll support you, even if it makes your mother hate me forever. I smiled for the first time in 24 hours. I think she already does. Probably. Yet that's never stopped me before. I disconnected, picked up my clutch, and walked out the door. It was time to face my household. The Ashford property looked like something from a publication. Georgian architecture, white columns, manicured hedges trimmed into perfect geometric shapes. The driveway was a sweeping curve of white gravel lined with luxury vehicles that probably cost more than my annual salary. I'd taken the train from the city, then a taxi from the station. The driver whistled when we pulled up to the gate. Some celebration, huh? Something like that. I walked toward the entrance where 2 staff members in crisp black vests stood behind a registration table, white tablecloth, botanical arrangements, and crystal vases. A neat stack of credentials organized alphabetically. The woman before me, someone I didn't recognize, provided her name and received a gleaming gold credential. I watched her pin it to her dress and walk through the entrance without a second glance. Name? The staff member asked me. Thea Brighton. He scanned his list, then reached under the table. When his hand came back up, he was holding a gray credential. Not gold, gray. The color of concrete. The color of something you'd rather not notice. I looked down at it. 3 words printed in plain black letters. Restricted access attendee. Ma'am, this credential allows you access to the ceremony area exclusively. The celebration tent requires a gold credential. I stared at him. I'm the bride's sibling. His face flickered with something that might have been sympathy. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm just following the list. Before I could respond, I felt a hand on my elbow. I turned. My mother, dressed in a pale pink gown that probably cost more than my rent, diamonds at her throat, a perfect smile that didn't reach her eyes. Thea, darling, let's talk privately for a moment. The staff member looked relieved. My mother pulled me toward a cluster of rose bushes out of earshot from the registration table. Don't make a scene, she said, still smiling. Anyone watching would think we were having a pleasant conversation. What does restricted access mean? I asked. My voice was steady. I was proud of that. It means... She glanced over her shoulder, then lowered her voice. It means you can attend the ceremony, yet there's no space for you at the celebration. The words hit me like ice water. No space. Sebastian's parents have numerous important guests. Thea, business associates, board members, individuals who matter to the Ashfords. We couldn't exactly ask them to give up seats for. She stopped herself. Yet I heard the end of that sentence anyway. For someone like you. You could have told me, I said. Before I spent $300 on a train ticket and a dress. Would you have come? No, exactly. She patted my arm like I was a child who didn't understand. Look, just stay for the ceremony, show your face, leave your contribution on the table, and then you can go. Felicity will understand. I looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman who had raised me. The woman who had forgotten my graduation. Cropped me out of household photographs and whispered about me in bathrooms. And now she stood here in her designer gown and her borrowed diamonds, asking me to donate $10,000 to a ceremony I wasn't allowed to attend. You desire my money? I said slowly. Yet not me. Don't be dramatic, Thea. Something in my chest clicked into place. Not breaking, setting. Acceptable, mother. I smiled. I won't make a scene. She exhaled with relief. She had no idea what was approaching. I played the part perfectly. I nodded when my mother finished her explanation. I let her guide me toward the ceremony area. A stunning garden with rows of white chairs and an arch dripping with white roses and eucalyptus. I took a seat in the very final row near the edge where no one would notice me. The chair was different from the others, cheaper, a basic folding chair, while the first 10 rows had cushioned seats with high backs. I sat down and watched my household prepare for the happiest day of their lives. My father stood near the front, making small talk with Sebastian's father, a silver-haired man in a suit that probably cost $5,000. My mother circulated among the guests, laughing and touching arms, and doing that thing she does where she makes everyone feel like they're the most important person in the space. Everyone, except me. Felicity emerged from the main residence in a cloud of white tulle and chantilly lace. A Vera Wang gown. I'd heard her mention the designer approximately 15 times. $20,000 of fabric and beading that made her look like royalty. She was beautiful. I'll grant her that. The ceremony began. Vows were exchanged. Tears were shed, mostly by my mother, who dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. When Felicity and Sebastian kissed, 150 individuals rose to their feet and applauded. I stayed seated. Afterward, the photographer gathered the households for portraits. Both parental sets, the ceremony party, extended relatives I'd never met. "Anyone else from the household?" the photographer called out. My mother shook her head. "No, we're all here." I watched them pose before the rose arch, smiling like the perfect household they'd always desired to be. And I thought, not for much longer. The ceremony ended with a shower of white petals and a string quartet performing Mendelssohn. Guests began drifting toward the celebration tent, an enormous white structure that glowed from within like a lantern. Through the open flaps, I could observe crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, tables draped in ivory linen, centerpieces of imported Dutch botanical displays that probably cost more than my weekly groceries. I stood at the edge of the garden, watching my household disappear into that golden light. No one looked back. For a moment, just a moment, I considered leaving, taking my envelope, walking back down that white gravel driveway, and never speaking to any of them again. It would have been the dignified thing to do, the quiet thing. Yet I was done being quiet. A hand touched my shoulder. I turned to find Aunt Margot standing beside me, her silver hair pulled back in an elegant twist, wearing a simple burgundy dress that somehow looked more regal than anything my mother had on. "How are you holding up, sweetheart?" I showed her the gray credential still clutched in my hand. "They don't desire me at the celebration." "I know," Harper told me. She didn't look surprised, just sad. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to retrieve my envelope." Aunt Margot nodded slowly. "The contribution display is near the east entrance. I walked past it earlier." She squeezed my hand. "I'll be nearby. You won't be alone." "Thank you, Thea." She held my gaze. "Whatever transpires in the next 10 minutes, don't apologize. Don't explain. Don't give them the satisfaction of observing you break." I took a deep breath. "I won't." She stepped back and I turned toward the tent. The contribution display was waiting. I was halfway to the entrance when a staff member stepped into my path. "Excuse me, ma'am." He was young, perhaps 22, with an apologetic expression. "May I observe your credential?" I held up the gray card. His face fell. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This credential doesn't grant access to the celebration area. Gold credentials exclusively." "I understand." I kept my voice calm. "Yet I'm the bride's sibling. I just need to— I'm genuinely sorry." He looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I have strict instructions. No exceptions." Over his shoulder, I could observe the celebration in full swing. Waiters carrying trays of champagne. Guests laughing and mingling. My parents standing near the head table, accepting congratulations like they'd just achieved something magnificent. And then, Felicity walked past. She was still in her ceremony gown, radiant and flushed from the ceremony. Her eyes met mine through the crowd. For 1 second, one single second, I thought she might stop, might tell the staff member to let me through, might remember that I was her sibling before I was an inconvenience. Instead, she looked away and kept walking. She didn't even slow down. The staff member shifted awkwardly. "Ma'am, if you'd like to wait outside, I can. It's acceptable." I stepped back. "I'm not trying to get in." He looked relieved. I turned and walked toward the east side of the tent, where a white table covered in silk fabric held a mountain of beautifully wrapped contributions. No security, no supervision, just a decorative sign that read, "Blessings for F&S" in gold calligraphy. My envelope was in there somewhere. $10,000 that my household expected to receive, yet didn't think I deserved to be thanked for in person. It was time to take it back. I want to pause here for a moment. You've observed what they did to me. The gray credential, the whispered explanations, my own sibling walking past like I was invisible. So, here's my question. What would you do? Would you leave quietly, confront your parents, or something else entirely? Drop your answer in the comments, A, B, or C. I genuinely want to know. And if this narrative has you feeling something right now, hit that share button. Someone in your existence needs to hear this. Now, Let me tell you what transpired next. The contribution display was even more elaborate up close. Ivory silk cascading to the grass, white peonies arranged in crystal bowls, boxes wrapped in expensive material with coordinated ribbons, the category you observe in luxury department stores. Some contributions were clearly expensive. A few had cards from brands I recognized. Tiffany, Williams-Sonoma. One long box that might have been from a jeweler. And there, near the left corner, partially hidden under a larger package, a white envelope with familiar handwriting. From Thea Brighton. I'd written those words myself 3 weeks ago at my tiny kitchen table, hoping this contribution would finally make my household perceive me differently. What a joke. I glanced around. The staff members were focused on the tent entrance. A few guests lingered nearby sipping champagne and chatting, yet no one was watching the contribution display. Why would they? Who steals from a ceremony? I'm not stealing, I reminded myself. I'm taking back what's mine. Aunt Margot appeared at the edge of my vision, standing near a trellis covered in climbing roses. She gave me a small nod. You're not alone. I took a breath and walked to the table. Casual, unhurried, like I was simply admiring the contributions. My fingers found the envelope immediately. The material was slightly crinkled at one corner. Someone had picked it up, looked at it, and positioned it back down. Probably whoever organized the display. They'd observed my name. They knew I'd given generously. Yet they'd still decided I didn't deserve to be there when Felicity opened it. I slid the envelope into my clutch in one smooth motion. That's when I heard heels clicking on the flagstone behind me. Thea? My mother's voice sharp, confused. What are you doing? I'd expected this, perhaps even hoped for it. My mother stood 3 feet away, champagne flute in hand, her perfectly made-up face frozen in an expression somewhere between shock and fury. Behind her, a few guests had turned to watch. Not many, yet enough. I asked you a question, she said, lowering her voice to a hiss. What are you doing at the contribution display? Taking back my envelope. She stopped. Processed. You can't do that. I can. I kept my voice calm, the way Aunt Margot had taught me. The contribution hasn't been presented yet. The envelope hasn't been opened. Legally and morally, it still belongs to me. This is ridiculous. Position it back right now. I didn't move. From somewhere behind me, I heard a familiar voice. Harper speaking into her wireless headset about an issue with the cake display. She walked past us without making eye contact, yet her hand brushed against mine as she passed. And into my palm, she pressed a folded piece of material. A copy of the note, the handwritten note she'd photographed the night before. Guest will receive restricted access credential. No meal in my mother's handwriting. I palmed the material into my clutch alongside my envelope. Evidence, confirmation, proof that this wasn't an oversight or a mistake. My mother had planned this from the beginning. Constance. A woman's voice interrupted us. Older, cultured, with the slight accent of old Connecticut money. Is everything all right? I turned. Eleanor Ashford, mother of the groom, silver hair, pearls at her throat, eyes that missed nothing. My mother's face went pale. Everything's acceptable, Eleanor. Just a small household matter. Yet Eleanor's gaze had already landed on me, on my gray credential, on the clutch I was holding just a little too tightly. I see, she said. How interesting. The next 30 seconds felt like an hour. Eleanor Ashford was still watching me with those sharp, intelligent eyes. My mother was frozen beside her, clearly calculating how to salvage the situation. And in the background, the string quartet performed something soft and romantic, while 150 oblivious guests celebrated. I looked at the gray credential still hanging from my dress. Then at the tent, golden and glowing, full of individuals who'd been told I wasn't important enough to sit with them. My mother took a step toward me. Thea, please don't do this here. Not today. Why not today? Because it's your sibling's ceremony. Is it? I tilted my head. Because from where I'm standing, it looks more like your ceremony. Your chance to impress the Ashfords. Your opportunity to prove the Brighton household belongs in their world. Eleanor's eyebrow rose almost imperceptibly. "That's not fair," my mother said. "Fair." I almost laughed. "You asked me for my contribution money 3 weeks ago. You desired it early so you could merge it with yours so Felicity would think the generosity came from you. When I said no, you decided to punish me. That's not. You crossed my name off the seating chart. You provided instructions for me to receive a restricted credential. You made certain I couldn't even sit down to eat at my own sibling's ceremony." My mother's face had gone from pale to gray. Eleanor Ashford hadn't said a word, yet her expression had shifted into something cold and evaluative. "I have the note, Mother." I patted my clutch. "Harper found it. Your handwriting, your instructions, no meal." For the first time in my existence, I watched my mother run out of words. And that's when Felicity appeared at the tent entrance. What the hell is transpiring? The crowd parted for my sibling like she was royalty. Felicity swept toward us in a cloud of white tulle, her face flushed with what I initially thought was joy, yet quickly recognized as rage. Sebastian trailed behind her, looking confused. Several guests had stopped their conversations to watch. "Thea." Felicity's voice was ice. "What are you doing at my contribution display?" I pulled the envelope from my clutch and held it up so everyone nearby could observe. "This is my contribution to you. A cashier's check for $10,000. A murmur rippled through the watching guests. 10,000 was a significant sum even for this crowd. "I saved for 3 years," I continued, keeping my voice steady. "I skipped holidays. I purchased my coffee at home. I wore the identical coat for 4 winters because I desired to present you something meaningful, because I thought perhaps this time you'd treat me like household." Felicity's expression flickered. Surprise, perhaps. Or discomfort. "Thea, this isn't. Yet I wasn't invited to the rehearsal dinner. I wasn't allowed to be a bridesmaid, and when I arrived today, I was provided this." I held up the gray credential with my free hand. "Restricted access, no meal. Your own sibling wasn't allowed to eat at your ceremony." The murmuring grew louder. I could observe guests exchanging glances. This wasn't supposed to transpire at a ceremony like this. That was... Felicity looked at our mother. "That was for space reasons. Sebastian's parents had so many guests. Mother wrote the note herself. I met my sibling's eyes. She positioned it in the seating chart. Her handwriting, her determination. She desired my money, yet she didn't desire me." Eleanor Ashford stepped forward. "Is this true, Constance?" The color drained from my mother's face completely. I've never observed my mother look so small. She stood there in her expensive dress and her borrowed diamonds, surrounded by the very individuals she'd been trying so desperately to impress, and she had no idea what to say. "Eleanor, I can explain. I'd love to hear it." Eleanor's voice was polite, yet sharp enough to cut glass. "Because from what I'm understanding, you denied your own offspring a seat at her sibling's ceremony, while still expecting her financial contribution. It's not. It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Constance?" My mother's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. More guests had gathered now. The string quartet had stopped performing. Even the waitstaff had paused to watch. Sebastian stood beside Felicity, looking like he desired to be anywhere else on earth. Felicity grabbed my arm. "Thea, stop this. You're ruining everything." I pulled free. "I'm not ruining anything. I'm taking back something that belongs to me. You can't just... I can." I held up the envelope one more time. "This check hasn't been deposited. This contribution hasn't been presented. And after everything you've done, everything you've let Mother do, I'm keeping it. You're being ridiculous." "No." I looked at my sibling, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. For 32 years, I've been the one who's ridiculous, believing that if I just tried harder, loved harder, gave more, you'd finally perceive me as equal. Yet you never did, and you never will. I slid the envelope back into my clutch. "So, I'm done trying." I turned to walk away, yet my mother's voice stopped me. "Thea Brighton, if you walk out of here, you're no longer part of this household." I turned back. "Mother," I said quietly, "I never was." The silence that followed was deafening. 150 individuals stood frozen in a perfect tableau. Champagne flutes raised, conversations abandoned, all eyes fixed on the scene unfolding by the contribution display. I could observe their expressions shifting from curiosity to shock, to something that looked almost like respect. My mother broke first. "You ungrateful, selfish Constance." Eleanor Ashford's voice cut through like a blade. "Perhaps this isn't the moment." My mother whirled toward her. "Eleanor, please. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." The older woman's gaze was arctic. "You excluded your offspring from her siblings' ceremony celebration. You denied her a seat, a meal, and basic dignity. And you expected her to silently contribute $10,000 anyway." She paused. "That's not a misunderstanding. That's a calculation." Sebastian shifted uncomfortably. "Mother, perhaps we should have been told the full situation before we agreed to host this ceremony." Eleanor didn't raise her voice, yet she didn't need to. The Ashfords value household, Constance. All of household, not just the members who photograph well. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. Felicity stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "This is my ceremony day. This is supposed to be the best day of my existence." I felt something shift in my chest. Not guilt exactly, yet something close to it. "I know," I said quietly, "and I'm sorry it's been disrupted. Yet I won't apologize for refusing to be invisible anymore." I turned to Aunt Margot, who had been watching from the edge of the crowd. She walked to my side and positioned her arm around my shoulder. "We're leaving now," she announced to no one in particular. "Have a lovely celebration." And together we walked toward the exit. Behind us, I heard my mother starting to cry. The chaos erupted the moment we cleared the rose garden. I could hear Felicity's voice rising to a shriek behind us. My mother's sobs, Sebastian trying to calm everyone down while simultaneously directing guests back toward the tent. The string quartet had started performing again, something upbeat and desperate, like they could restore normalcy through sheer musical willpower. "Don't look back," Aunt Margot murmured. "Keep walking." Yet I did look back just once. My father was standing at the edge of the tent watching me leave. His face was impossible to read, somewhere between shame and sorrow, and something I couldn't name. For a moment I thought he might come after me, might finally, after 32 years, choose me. He didn't. He turned and walked back to my mother's side. Aunt Margot squeezed my shoulder. "I know, sweetheart. I know." We reached the front of the property where a taxi was already waiting. I'd called it that morning before I left my residence. Some portion of me had known I wouldn't be staying for the celebration. "You planned ahead," Aunt Margot said, impressed. "I've learned that no one else plans for me." We climbed into the back seat. The driver, the identical man who dropped me off earlier, glanced at us in the rearview mirror. "Short celebration, huh?" Something like that. As the car pulled away, I turned to watch the Ashford property shrink in the rear window. The white columns, the manicured hedges, the tent glowing gold against the afternoon sky. Somewhere in there, my household was dealing with the aftermath of what I'd done. And I felt nothing. Not triumph, not satisfaction. Just an enormous, exhausted emptiness. "What transpires now?" I asked. Aunt Margot took my hand. "Now," she said, "you start your existence." We were a quarter mile from the property when I heard the shouting. The driver slowed as another car pulled up alongside us, a white vehicle with the Ashford Estate logo on the door. Through the window, I observed Felicity in the back seat, still in her ceremony dress, mascara streaking down her face. "Thea, stop." The driver looked at me. "Ma'am, keep driving." Yet the vehicle cut in front of us, forcing a stop. Before I could react, Felicity had thrown open her door and was running toward our taxi in $20,000 worth of ruined tool. "You have to come back." She was breathless, desperate. "You have to fix this." I rolled down my window. "There's nothing to fix, Felicity." "Yes, there is." Her voice cracked. "Eleanor is furious. Sebastian's father is asking questions. Mother is. Mother won't stop crying." "That sounds like a problem for Mother, not for me." "Thea, please." Felicity leaned against the car door, and for a moment she looked like the little girl who used to sneak into my room during thunderstorms. "I'll make it right. You can come back to the celebration. I'll tell them there was a mix-up." "A mix-up?" I stared at her. "You think this was a mix-up?" It was complicated. Mother desired my money, and you desired to marry Sebastian without anyone asking awkward questions about your accountant sibling." I shook my head. "That's not a mix-up, Felicity. That's a choice." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I'm your sibling." "Yes." I felt Aunt Margot's hand tighten on mine. "And you chose to let them treat me like I wasn't." Felicity opened her mouth, closed it. She had nothing. "Return to your ceremony," I said. "Your guests are waiting." I rolled up the window. Drive. My phone started ringing before we reached the main road. Mother, father, Felicity, mother again. Unknown numbers that were probably relatives calling on someone else's behalf. I silenced all of them and stared out the window at the Rhode Island countryside. Rolling hills, stone walls, residences with 3-car garages and tennis courts. "You're allowed to feel things," Aunt Margot said quietly. "This isn't nothing." "I know," I swallowed. "Yet I can't feel them yet. Not while I'm still in this car. Not while I can still observe that residence in the distance." My phone rang again. This time it was my father. Something in me, some old childish hope, made me answer. "Thea." His voice was thin, strained. "Please come back. Your mother is... She's not handling this well. She's not handling it well. I know how it looks. Do you?" I felt the anger rising now, pushing through the numbness. "Father, they provided me a gray credential. They told me I couldn't eat. They desired my money, yet not my presence. And you stood there. You let it transpire. Silence. I didn't know about the credential. You didn't ask." My voice broke slightly and I hated it. "In 32 years, you've never once asked how I was being treated. You let Mother handle it. You let Felicity be the important one. And you never, ever protected me. Thea, I'm not coming back, Father. Not today. Perhaps not ever. You can't just cut off your household. Watch me." I disconnected. Aunt Margot didn't say anything. She just reached over and gently pried the phone from my shaking hand. "You can have this back later," she said. "When you're ready." The taxi drove on. Behind us, the Ashford property disappeared over the horizon. I didn't look back again. The tears didn't come until we reached the train station. Aunt Margot had insisted on riding back to the city with me. We sat in a quiet corner of the Amtrak platform, surrounded by weekend travelers who had no idea that my entire world had just collapsed and rebuilt itself in the span of 2 hours. I actually did it. My voice sounded strange in my own ears. I actually took the envelope and walked out. "You did. They're going to hate me." Aunt Margot pulled me close. "Some of them will, yet, sweetheart, they weren't treating you with affection to begin with. You can't lose something you never had." The tears came then. Not the delicate photogenic tears my mother produced on command, yet ugly heaving sobs that shook my whole body. I cried for the graduation they'd missed, for the household portrait they'd cropped me out of, for the 32 years I'd spent believing that if I just loved them hard enough, they'd love me back. It was never going to be enough, was it? I whispered. No matter what I did. "No, honey, it wasn't." Aunt Margot stroked my hair like she used to when I was small. "Some individuals aren't capable of observing value in others. That's a failing in them, not in you." The train arrived. We boarded in silence. As the Rhode Island scenery gave way to the gray edges of New York City, my phone buzzed one more time. I glanced at the screen. A message from Harper. "Eleanor pulled Felicity into a private space after you left. No one knows what transpired. Yet Felicity was crying when she came out. I think things are about to change for your household." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I positioned my phone away and closed my eyes. That was the moment I left my siblings' ceremony. Yet the narrative doesn't end there. What transpired in the weeks that followed with my parents, with Felicity, with Eleanor Ashford, I didn't observe approaching. Before I tell you the rest, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with household? Comment below. A. If you've done it, B. if you're considering it, or C, if you need the courage, and if this narrative hit close to home, consider subscribing. The ending will surprise you. Now, let me tell you what transpired next. My phone didn't stop buzzing for 3 days. I turned off notifications, yet I could observe the counter climbing every time I glanced at the screen. Missed calls, 47, messages, over 100, voicemails that I couldn't bring myself to listen to. The Monday after the ceremony, I went to my bank during lunch break and voided the cashier's check. The teller, a different one than before, asked if something was wrong. Change of arrangements, I said. I'm keeping the money. That evening, Aunt Margot called from her botanical business. I've been hearing things, she said, scissors snipping in the background. Eleanor Ashford had a very long conversation with your mother after you left. Your mother called me this morning to blame me for encouraging you. What did you say? I told her I didn't encourage anything. You made your own choice. A pause. I also told her that if she'd treated you with basic dignity, none of this would have transpired. How'd she take that? She disconnected on me. So, about as expected. I almost laughed. What about Felicity? Aunt Margot's voice softened. From what I hear, the honeymoon has been tense. Eleanor said something to Felicity privately. No one knows exactly what, yet apparently there have been tears. Sebastian's been trying to smooth things over, yet Eleanor as well. She's Eleanor. She doesn't forget. I processed this in silence. Portion of me desired to feel vindicated, yet mostly I just felt tired. What do I do now? I asked. You move forward, sweetheart. You've spent 32 years waiting for them to change. Now you stop waiting. I looked around my tiny studio residence. The cramped kitchen, the view of the brick wall, the empty envelope holder on my desk. I think I can do that. 2 weeks after the ceremony, 3 things transpired. First, my promotion came through. I'd been working towards senior accountant for almost 2 years, and the timing felt almost cosmic. My supervisor, a practical woman named Margaret, who had no patience for drama, called me into her office on a Tuesday afternoon. You've earned this, Thea. Whatever's transpiring in your personal existence, you've never let it affect your work. She slid a folder across her desk. 12% raise, new title. You start next month. I thanked her and managed not to cry until I reached the bathroom. Second, my mother left a voicemail. I'd been deleting them unheard, yet something about this one made me pause. Her voice was different, not the sharp, controlling tone I was used to, yet something thinner, almost fragile. Thea, I know you're not listening to these, yet I need you to know that Eleanor spoke to me about household, about how we treat each other. A long pause. I don't agree with everything she said, yet I've been thinking, perhaps we should talk. I saved the voicemail. I didn't call back. Third, my father transmitted an electronic message. Not to the household group, just to me. Private. Thea, I don't know how to say this, so I'll just say it. I'm sorry. I should have protected you. I should have spoken up. I didn't, and that's a failure I'll have to live with. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to know that I observe it now. I observe what we did. If you ever desire to talk, I'm here. Father. I read the message 7 times. I didn't respond, yet I saved it to a folder labeled Perhaps Someday. 1 month after the ceremony, I wrote the message I'd been composing in my head for years. I sat in my favorite coffee establishment, a tiny place near my residence that made excellent flat whites, and stared at the blinking cursor for a long time before I started typing. Dear Mother, Father, and Felicity, I'm not writing this to hurt you. I'm writing because I need you to understand something. I'm not angry anymore. Anger takes energy, and I've spent too many years providing my energy to individuals who didn't value it. What I feel now is something closer to clarity. For 32 years, I tried to earn a position in this household. I was quiet when I should have spoken up. I provided when I should have held back. I accepted treatment that I would never have tolerated from strangers because I believed that household meant enduring pain. I was wrong. Household means choosing each other. It means showing up even when it's inconvenient. It means treating someone with dignity even when, especially when, no one is watching. You didn't choose me, and I can't make you. Yet I can choose myself, and that's what I'm doing now. This isn't a door closing. It's a door that finally has a lock. If any of you ever desire a genuine relationship, one built on respect, not obligation, you know how to reach me. Until then, I wish you well. I genuinely do. Thea. I copied Aunt Margot. Then I hit transmit. The responses came within hours. My mother's was defensive. Felicity's was tearful. My father's was 2 words. I understand. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I finished my coffee, paid my bill, and walked out into the autumn sunshine. I had an existence to build. 6 weeks after the ceremony, I moved into a new residence. 1 bedroom, actual closet space, a window that looked out onto a small park instead of a brick wall. The rent was higher, yet I could afford it now, partially because of my promotion, and partially because I had $10,000 that wasn't going anywhere else. Aunt Margot drove down from Providence to help me unpack. We spent the whole day arranging furniture, hanging curtains, and arguing about the best placement for the small succulent collection I'd started. "This one needs more light," she said, holding up a particularly stubborn echeveria, "and this corner gets good afternoon sun. Trust me, I've been growing things for 40 years. I let her win that argument. Around sunset, we took a break and sat on my new balcony with glasses of inexpensive wine. Below us, children were playing in the park, while their parents scrolled through phones on benches. Normal existence, ordinary joy. "I brought you something," Aunt Margot said. She handed me a framed photograph, me at my secondary school graduation, clutching my diploma and smiling despite the tears in my eyes. I remembered that moment. It was right after the ceremony, right after I'd realized my parents weren't there. "You kept this? I've had it on my desk for 15 years. She smiled. "Figured it's time it hung somewhere it belongs." I stared at the image. Younger me, hopeful me, the me who still believed things would get better if I just kept trying. "Thank you," I whispered, "for everything, for being there when they weren't." Aunt Margot positioned her arm around my shoulder. "That's what household does, sweetheart. Real household." I hung the photograph above my desk that night. For the first time, I looked forward to coming home. I've had considerable time to think about why my household did what they did. My mother, Constance, grew up in a residence where status was everything. Her parents measured worth in titles and tax brackets. When Felicity married into the Ashford household, Mother observed her own redemption, a chance to finally belong to the world she'd always envied. I wasn't portion of that picture, not because she hated me, yet because I didn't fit her vision of who the Brightons could become. Psychologists have a term for this: vicarious achievement. When parents live through their offspring's success because they feel inadequate about their own. Mother couldn't ascend the social ladder herself, so she attached herself to Felicity's journey. And anyone who threatened that narrative, including her own offspring, became expendable. Felicity wasn't malicious. She was complicit. She grew up believing the world owed her more because she achieved more. When Mother suggested downgrading my role at the ceremony, Felicity didn't object because objecting would have cost her something. Golden offspring don't question systems that benefit them. And Father was the enabler, the man who kept peace by never taking sides, which in practice always meant taking Mother's side. His silence wasn't neutral. It was a choice. Yet here's what I've learned. Understanding why someone hurt you doesn't mean you have to accept it. Compassion and boundaries can coexist. I don't hate my household. I pity them slightly. They're trapped in a residence built on conditional affection, and they can't even observe the walls. Yet I'm not trapped anymore. If you're watching this and you've been waiting for permission to stop accepting less than you deserve from household, from partners, from anyone, consider this your sign. You are allowed to love individuals and still walk away from them. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to choose yourself. And you are never, ever obligated to stay at a table where you're not fed. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this narrative helped you feel less alone, drop a comment. A, if you've established boundaries with household. B, if you're working toward it. Or C, if you needed to hear this today. I read every single one. And if you desire more narratives like this, subscribe and tap the bell. There's a new one waiting for you in the description right now. Until next time, take care of yourself. No one else will do it the way you deserve.